Hello, this is the reflection for the sixth Sunday of Easter, Sunday, May 10th, 2026. And the text I preached on was the Acts of the Apostles, chapter 17, verses 22 to 31. Today's story from the Acts of the Apostles consists of a speech attributed to the Apostle Paul, which he makes in the city of Athens, at that time still a center of philosophical learning in the Roman world. He addresses his speech to the Areopagus, the governing council of Athens. Paul seeks at one and the same time to find common ground with his pagan hearers and to critique certain aspects of their paganism. His opening remarks may be read as either praising his hearers as extremely religious, as our translation puts it, or as castigating them for being extremely superstitious. Speeches in Paul's day typically began by praising the audience, so the complimentary reading should be preferred, but the pejorative reading is perhaps an undertone. Paul's critique of paganism is familiar to readers of the Jewish scriptures. He denounces idolatry. The God who made the world and everything in it, he who is Lord of heaven and earth, does not live in shrines made by human hands, nor is he served by human hands, as though he needed anything, since he himself gives to all mortals life and breath and all things. Since we are God's offspring, we ought not to think that the deity is like gold or silver or stone, an image formed by the art and imagination of mortals. Even though Paul is being critical of conventional pagan religious practice, his critique would have found a hearing among sophisticated pagan philosophers who likewise argued that the deity was both self-sufficient and incapable of being adequately represented by human art. The downside of Paul's critique has been its interpretation by future generations of Christians, who have used it to denounce as idolatry venerable religious traditions such as Hinduism or indigenous spiritual and cultural practices. Such chauvinistic spirituality has regrettably done great harm. Even though Paul professes to know the truth about God that his hearers presumably do not, by averring that he knows the identity of the unknown God, he nevertheless goes out of his way to meet his hearers where they are at, rather than demanding that they come to where he is at. Last month at Owen's baptism, we renewed our baptismal covenant and promised to proclaim by word and example the good news of God in Christ. Today's story from the Acts of the Apostles teaches us that, while it is important that we challenge assumptions, it is also important that we honor the beliefs, practices, and cultures of those to whom we proclaim the good news. What we need to learn, then, is how to translate the good news of God in Christ in such a way so that that good news both makes sense to the secular culture in which we find ourselves, but also challenges some of the assumptions, even deeply held ones, of the wider culture. In a way, that process starts with ourselves. We need to have the good news proclaimed to us in such a way that it makes sense to us, while also challenging our own deeply held assumptions. The questions that this process raises are first, what the good news of God in Christ means to us, and second, how that good news has changed our lives. If we can answer those questions, we can proclaim the good news to others. If we can't answer them, we have some work to do. We will shortly be inviting the wider community into our church building for our Mother's Day breakfast. This is a chance to proclaim by word and example the good news of God in Christ, perhaps to someone who really needs to hear it. The question, then, is whether or not we are ready.